How many times have you said yes when every cell in your body screamed no? How often have you swallowed your pride, buried your anger, and smiled when all you wanted was to scream?
And why? Because you wanted peace? Approval? Love? Because you were afraid to disturb the illusion of harmony? You've learned it early. Keep your head down, don't make waves, be nice. Niceness is currency. Politeness is safety. Comfort is survival. But let me ask you something far more dangerous. What does it cost to live like that? You think avoiding conflict is wisdom. You think being agreeable makes you loved. But deep down, it's not love if it demands your silence. It's not respect if it thrives on your submission. It's not peace if it poisons your soul. So here's the truth. You wear a mask every day, a smile stitched together with fear, stitched together with compromise. And that mask, it's not protecting you. It's suffocating you. We live in a culture of fake harmony. Don't be dramatic. Don't take it personally. Let it go. You've heard it all. You've probably said it too. And every time a piece of you faded, you weren't born to be silent. You weren't made to be liked by everyone, but you were conditioned to believe that your truth is dangerous. From childhood, don't talk back. Be a good boy. Smile for the camera. Be ladylike. So we learned to smile while dying inside. We learned to tolerate discomfort just to keep others comfortable. And now, you're an adult still smiling, still obeying, still shrinking. Let me tell you something brutal. That version of you, the one who is always agreeable, always calm, always pleasant, doesn't exist. It's a ghost, a mannequin, and you know it, because every time you bend, something inside you breaks. Every time you say it's fine, when it's not, you betray yourself. Every time you avoid saying what you really feel, you reinforce the lie. I don't matter, but you do. You matter more than their comfort, more than their perception of you, more than your fear of being misunderstood. Because the truth is, there is no freedom without truth, and truth often sounds like conflict. Have you ever watched yourself in the mirror after a conversation where you didn't speak up? There's shame there, quiet but deafening. A dull ache that says, you did it again. You betrayed your anger. You buried your needs. You became what they wanted instead of what you are. And slowly, piece by piece, your soul pays the price. Real peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of authenticity. You want to be free? Then take off the damn mask. Start with one moment. Say what you mean. Stop apologizing for existing. You don't owe anyone a smile. You don't owe anyone silence. You owe yourself the truth. Remember this. The most dangerous prison is the one whose bars you pretend are beautiful. Smile enough times in discomfort, and soon you forget what real joy feels like. You fake laugh until you can't recognize your real one. And then you wake up and wonder who the hell you are. You cannot be both free and afraid of being disliked. Friedrich Nietzsche said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." You don't belong to the tribe. You belong to yourself. But you've built your personality to be digestible, acceptable, liked, even loved, but only in the way they define love. You let your fire burn low so others won't feel the heat. That's not kindness. That's self-erasure. Let me ask again, what does it cost to live like that? It costs you your boundaries, your authenticity, your passion, your voice, your life. You think conflict is the enemy, but it's not. The enemy is silence when your soul is screaming. Speak, even if your voice shakes, even if it ends a relationship, even if they say you're too much. Because the moment you choose truth over peace, you become dangerous. Not to others, to the system that taught you to hide. And that's when you start to live. The mask was never your face. It was your cage. Rip it off, even if it hurts, even if they don't understand. Because freedom doesn't come from being liked. Freedom comes from being real. You've been silent long enough. Now speak, even if it starts a war, especially if it starts a war. Because that war might be the beginning of your peace. You've been told your whole life to avoid conflict. Stay calm. Be the bigger person. Don't start drama. But what if I told you this? Conflict is not destruction. It's revelation. Ask yourself this. Why does your voice tremble when you want to say what you truly feel? Why does your stomach turn when you know a disagreement is coming? What is it exactly that you're afraid of? Being wrong? Being rejected? Being seen? The fear is real, but it's lying to you. Here's a brutal truth. Most people don't fear conflict because they hate fighting. They fear conflict because it threatens the image they've built of being good, agreeable, likable. But guess what? That image is killing you. You've confused quiet with peace. You've mistaken avoidance for maturity. You've labeled your fear of confrontation as emotional intelligence. It's not. It's fear, masked, polished, and praised. Let me remind you of something. Real relationships, the kind that are built on truth, not illusion, are forged in fire. Not in silence, not in comfort, in conflict. Think of the conversations you avoided, the friend who hurt you, the partner who dismissed your feelings, the boss who crossed a boundary. You said nothing. You smiled. You let it go. But it didn't go anywhere, did it? It stayed. It festered. It turned into resentment. Because avoiding conflict doesn't dissolve the problem. It buries it. And buried things rot. So here's the question. Are you keeping peace, or are you keeping the lie alive? Conflict isn't war. It's truth wearing no makeup. It's raw. It's uncomfortable. It's necessary. Because when you avoid conflict, you're not choosing peace. You're choosing dishonesty. With them. With yourself. Let me break the illusion. Conflict is not a bomb. It's a mirror. And that's why it scares you. It reflects everything you pretend not to see. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes?" What do you think he meant? He meant this. To transform, you must first burn down the falsehood. And conflict, real honest conflict, is often the fire. But let's be clear. This is not an excuse to scream. It's not a license for cruelty. It's a call to clarity, to truth, to presence. You don't raise your voice to dominate. You raise your truth to exist. Ask yourself this. When was the last time you felt fully heard? Not nodded at, not tolerated, heard. If the answer is, I don't remember, then maybe it's because you've never really spoken your full truth. And maybe you've never demanded to be met in your fullness. Conflict is a door. Behind it is either connection or clarity that it's time to walk away. Either way you win, but only if you're brave enough to knock. Here's what's really at stake. Your self-respect, your inner alignment, your emotional integrity. Because every time you avoid conflict, you trade those things for comfort. And comfort is a poor substitute for dignity. Here's a story you might know too well. You bite your tongue. You make excuses for others. You tolerate more than you should. You say, it's not a big deal. Until one day you snap. Over something small. But it wasn't about that one thing. It was about everything. Because truth suppressed becomes pressure. And pressure eventually explodes. You don't need to explode. You need to express. You need to say, that hurt me. I don't agree. I deserve better. This isn't okay with me. And say it before the resentment poisons everything. Here's another brutal truth. People will call you difficult when you stop being compliant. They will call you dramatic when you stop being silent. They will call you selfish when you stop being selfless. Let them. They are not uncomfortable because you're wrong. They are uncomfortable because they can no longer control you with their expectations. Speak anyway, not because it will be easy, not because everyone will applaud you, but because the alternative is slow, invisible death. Death of your voice, death of your values, death of your authenticity. And remember this, you're not the villain for standing up for yourself. You're not cruel for setting a boundary. You're not too much for telling the truth. You are real, and the world punishes what it cannot tame. Nietzsche said, "He who cannot put his thoughts on ice should not enter into the heat of dispute." Which means, don't enter conflict to win. Enter conflict to understand, to be understood, to reveal. Conflict is a scalpel, not a sword. Use it to cut through illusion, not to wound. You want freedom? Then stop fearing the fire, because sometimes you need to burn a false peace to make space for a real one. Sometimes you need to break the surface to finally breathe. Speak. Risk discomfort. Risk being misunderstood. Because you know what's worse? Living a life where no one, not even you, knows who you really are. So here's the challenge. The next time your body screams, "This isn't okay," listen and respond. Not with rage, but with truth. You don't owe anyone your silence, but you owe yourself your truth. Conflict is not the enemy. It's the beginning of everything real. What would you do if you weren't afraid? Stop. Read that again. Really? What would you do if fear wasn't sitting on your chest every morning? Would you walk away? Speak up. Start over. Say the thing that's burning in your chest. Then ask yourself, why haven't you? Here's the truth. Fear isn't just an emotion. It's a full-time warden. A master jailer with no chains, just invisible locks. You think you're making choices, but most days it's fear choosing for you. Afraid of being alone, so you stay. Afraid of failing, so you don't try. Afraid of judgment, so you shrink. Afraid of loss, so you cling. You don't live, you negotiate. And fear whispers with perfect logic. Don't rock the boat. Don't say too much. Don't stand out. And the worst one of all, what if they don't love you anymore? That one, that's the blade at your throat. That's the one keeping your soul in a cage. Let me be clear. Fear isn't your fault. It's your inheritance. You were taught to obey it. From the first no, that meant be smaller. From the first don't cry, that meant hide your feelings. From the first punishment for telling the truth, you learned that fear keeps you safe. But here's the thing, it doesn't. It just keeps you small. Nietzsche once said, "The secret of reaping the greatest fruitfulness and the greatest enjoyment from life is to live dangerously." Why dangerously? Because safety is an illusion. Because your comfort zone is lined with razor wire. Because fear kills dreams before life can. Let's call fear what it really is. A liar, a thief, a slow poison. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It says, not now. Maybe later. Let's wait and see. But later becomes never. And wait and see becomes watch your life pass by. You want to know what fear sounds like? It sounds like, I'll ruin everything. They'll hate me. I'm not ready. What if I'm wrong? But more than anything, it sounds like silence. Because fear convinces you that silence is safer than truth. But safety is not peace. It's just absence. Absence of risk. Absence of growth. Absence of self. You don't overcome fear by pretending it's not there. You overcome it by walking straight into it. The only way out is through. You must confront it. Name it. Drag it out of the shadows. Say, I am afraid. And then do the thing anyway. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to be ruled by it. Let me ask you this. Who would you be if you weren't trying so hard to be liked? What decisions would you make if you didn't fear being wrong? What truths would you speak if you didn't fear being abandoned? What life would you build if fear wasn't the architect of your every choice? You don't need more time. You need more truth. And the truth is, fear will never go away. But it will get smaller when you stop feeding it your future. You've spent years trying to manage fear, like a guest you don't want but can't kick out. But fear isn't a guest. It's a parasite, and it feeds on your silence. Here's a moment you've lived. You had a chance to say it, to leave, to act, but your heart raced. Your breath shortened. You rationalized. You played it safe. And then nothing happened. The world didn't end, but something inside you cracked. You walked away knowing, I didn't show up for myself. That's the cost, and it accumulates, until one day, you no longer recognize the person you've become. There's a war inside you, between the voice that says go and the voice that screams stay. You don't need to silence the scream. You just need to choose the whisper. Choose the part of you that remembers who you were before fear took over, before shame told you to be small, before loss made you cautious, before rejection made you quiet. You were born bold. Every child is. They say what they feel. They ask for what they want. They cry. They scream. They dance. They laugh. Then the world gets to them, and fear moves in. You want to be free? Then fire your jailer. The fear of conflict. The fear of not being liked. The fear of the unknown. The fear of losing control. You must stop negotiating with fear, because every negotiation ends with you losing something. Here's what they won't tell you. Fear doesn't disappear when you avoid it. It disappears when you disobey it. So disobey. Disobey the rule that says don't upset them. Disobey the lie that says you're not enough. Disobey the belief that you must play it safe, because safe is where dreams die. Safe is where your real self suffocates. Nietzsche said, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Your why must be bigger than your fear. Your desire for truth must be louder than your need for approval. Your hunger for freedom must outgrow your appetite for comfort. Fear is not the enemy. Submission is, because fear will always visit, but submission lets it move in. You will feel fear again, but you never have to obey it again. So here's the challenge. Next time fear whispers, don't. You say, I will. Not because it's easy, not because you're fearless, but because you finally understand. Obedience is death, and you didn't come here to die in pieces. You came here to burn, to rise, to live, fully, boldly, loudly, even if your voice trembles, even if your knees shake, even if your hands sweat, especially then, because on the other side of fear is everything they told you couldn't be, and everything you always were. Now go, open the door, and walk out. The jailer is asleep. The key was always in your hands. Everyone wants freedom. Freedom to speak, to live, to be. But here's what no one tells you. Freedom doesn't come gently. It does not arrive with a soft knock. It breaks in, like a storm, like a scream, like a fight, because freedom does not begin in peace. It begins in conflict. Let me ask you, when was the last time you felt truly free? Not just not busy, not just on vacation. I mean free in your bones. Free to say no, free to walk away, free to be disliked. Can you remember? If not, here's why. Because real freedom has a price. And that price is conflict. Conflict with others. Conflict with systems. Conflict with your own conditioning. You cannot be free and liked by everyone. You cannot be free and obedient to every rule. You cannot be free and avoid discomfort. You must choose. Approval or authenticity. Comfort or courage. Silence or sovereignty. You can't have both. Here's the brutal truth. Most people don't want freedom. They want comfort wrapped in the illusion of choice. They want to be accepted, praised, approved, even if it means wearing a mask every single day. But masks are heavy. They crack, they slip, and they suffocate. Freedom means ripping the mask off. It means saying, "This is who I am," even if your voice shakes, even if they walk away, even if the ground beneath you crumbles. Especially then, because freedom is not handed to you. It is taken. Nietzsche said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." Why? Because the tribe wants safety, and safety hates change. Freedom is change. It's rebellion. It's evolution. It threatens the status quo, and the status quo fights back. So when you finally stand up, when you finally say, "Enough, I want more," don't be surprised when they call you arrogant, unrealistic, selfish. They are not responding to your truth. They are reacting to their fear, because your freedom reminds them of their cage, and that makes people very uncomfortable. So here's the moment. You say what you've been holding in. You draw a line. You make a move. And suddenly there's conflict. Not because you're wrong, but because you've changed the rules. You stop playing nice. Stop playing small. Stop playing at all. That's when the war begins. But listen closely. That war is sacred. That fire is holy, because it's burning down the false life you built out of fear. And what rises from those ashes is you, unfiltered, unapologetic, unchained. You want peace? Fight for it. You want truth? Face it. You want freedom? Earn it. Through conflict, through rejection, through the breaking and remaking of everything you thought you were. There's a voice inside you. It's been quiet, afraid. It says, "Speak. Stand. Go." You've been ignoring it, because listening would mean breaking the rules, disappointing others, risking everything. But that voice is you, and every time you silence it, you betray yourself. Let's get honest. Freedom feels lonely at first, because you have to walk through the fire alone. But on the other side, you meet people who aren't afraid of your truth, who don't need you to shrink, who see you and stay, but you'll never find them, while hiding behind who you're not. Here's what conflict really is. It's friction between the life you've settled for and the life that's trying to be born. You feel the tension. You call it anxiety. You call it doubt. You call it confusion. But it's none of those things. It's your soul pushing back. It's saying, "I refuse to be caged." Conflict is the midwife of transformation. It delivers you to yourself, but only if you stay with it. Don't run. Don't numb. Don't lie to yourself. Stay. In the discomfort. In the shaking. In the breaking. Stay until what's false falls away, and only truth remains. You were not born to be agreeable. You were not born to fit. You were not born to serve someone else's comfort. You were born to be free, and freedom demands friction. Nietzsche again. He who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. Freedom is the flight. Conflict is the climb, and you are halfway up the mountain. You're tired. You're scared. You want to go back. But there is no back. There is only through. So climb. Fight. Speak. Break. Burn. Whatever it takes to stop living on your knees. Whatever it takes to stop living someone else's life. Here's your challenge. Don't just crave freedom. Create it. With your words. with your choices, with your courage to let things fall apart. Because sometimes things must fall apart to make room for what's real. One final question. What would you give for your freedom? Would you give comfort? Would you give approval? Would you give the illusion of peace? Then give it. Let it all fall. And watch what rises. It will be painful. It will be lonely. It will be worth it. Because freedom is not given. It is claimed.